All right, well, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Glad you guys you're enduring this with me. So this is all good. Good to have friends in low places, right? Or however that song goes. All right, so we're gonna kind of talk about some redundant things. Again, I'm not sure who was not here yesterday, but so we're going to have some things that are a little bit redundant, but I'm going to highlight those things for the most part, so we don't. So the details that we shared from on the competitive bidding process, they're similar, the same, whether regarding if it's category 1, category 2. So I'll just highlight those things. I won't go into granular detail. So just for those, I think if you did miss yesterday, then you'll just get the highlights for today. But again, all of these will be posted here very shortly, so you'll have access to this information as well. So, all right. So let's get started on the category 2 side of the house, and we'll talk about that. If I get my mouse to work. All right, so we're gonna show kind of where we are again in the process. We'll talk about eligible services specific to the category 2 side, and then we're gonna review the prior models just as from a comparison standpoint, and doing the new category 2 structure. Yes, Simon, thank you for the message. I did hit record this time, so we've got this going. But I do appreciate your email, and I do have all future ones doing that automatically. So I like that trick you sent. So I appreciate that. And then again, we're going to highlight the competitive bidding process. Again, just highlighting it because we talked about that in detail yesterday. Just to make sure we're all on the same page regarding the competitive bidding side as well, because it does still apply to the category 2 stuff. All right, so we are in the 470 world, as we talked about yesterday. This is still the process time of year that we are dealing with the 470 and the competitive bidding side. Okay, and again, this is kind of where we are in the cycle of the world of E-rate on this. All right, so we're going to switch over from category 1 to category 2. The category 2 is basically everything inside of your school or library buildings, your network equipment, the management of that network equipment, cabling, etc. All those things inside that will basically connect the broadband services to the staff and students, to the eligible entities. So here's some examples of category 2 and what these are available for reimbursement. Basically, any of the networking cable, wireless access points, switches, routers, a fully managed solution, if you will. There are companies that will come in and do a full wireless management deployment, and that is an eligible service. You just pay one fee and they take care of everything. And then all the kind of maintenance pieces of those components as well. Now remember that if you have somebody coming in and repairing like a computers and different things that are non-eligible, you can still have that person, if they're sharing the responsibility of doing the eligible equipment as well, those pieces just need to be cost allocated or broken up, just so you can get reimbursement on those. So just be aware, the repair and upkeep on the eligible pieces and parts only. So, and then technical support as well is also something that is available. Again, as we talked about last year, the eligible service list is approved by the FCC every year. Some minor changes were made just yesterday, I believe is when it was announced, or might have been actually Tuesday. Again, the main pieces that are on the list that is kind of relevant and should be more pay attention to, not necessarily what equipment is or isn't, but mainly that if this causes national security threat, and this really applies to the category 2 side. I know we talked about this yesterday, but it does apply to the category 2 side because there were some equipment components that were on this list that were deemed as a national security threat. It's basically from the manufacturer side, not necessarily general equipment pieces, but actually specific manufacturers that make those pieces of equipment. And then a clarification again for off-campus E-rate funded usage. So that is still a specific detail that's not dead, but it is a clarification that they made. And again, new administration. So hopefully this is gaining some national attention, and we might hear some additional things on that in the months to come. So, okay. So we're going to dive into the category 2. There are some changes and shifts that I want to walk through with everybody. So we're more clear than we were an hour ago. Okay. So let's just kind of start back to the first news cycle from the original new order of the category 2. Just kind of start from there. We'll give it highlights of what that model looks like. Okay. So what they did is that's when they broke out, they basically changed it from priority 1, priority 2 to category 1, category 2, and had separate budgets, complete separate budgets, which is a good thing, because nationally what happened was on a priority 2 filing, only the highest discounted percentage NSLP schools were ever getting any kind of funding because it was a priority 2. Priority 1 and priority 2 shared one budget. So anything dollars that got left over after all priority 1 stuff was done, there wasn't much left to do that. So they switched it to do a category 1, category 2, 2 separate budgets. So now you have independent funding available, which helps deploy monies to all schools and all discounts across the country. So they were broken up by individual school, a little bit of a heartache over the years. So individual school or library systems, that was really tough and challenging to manage. There was a school calculation, and your calculation was based upon full-time and also peak part-time, which is a good thing because some schools have students that come in from other schools. And so those can be counted in terms of kind of a short-term to help with your budget for that particular school. Okay. Library systems were calculated by square footage. And then the funding floor was about $9,600, regardless if it was a school or library. Inflation did change every year. So that cost per student or square footage changed slightly every single year. And then the category 2 budgets were over a 5-year period of time. And that could fluctuate up and down based upon how the student population changed as well. Okay. So you had to not only manage your budgets by school, you have to watch your student population, because you can use your student population for 2 years. If your population, let's say, dropped, you can use a year prior population to keep that budget as high as possible for you. Okay. So there's all these little pieces and facets that you had to micromanage. It's time consuming for a lot of folks. And then there was this transition year, which is our current school year that we're in, which is funding year 2020. So in general, not a lot of things changed, but there were a few changes that kind of made it a transition year or a bridge year, if you will, to bring it from the first 5-year pilot window to the next one. And these pieces were basically, it added the 6th year. They added a prorated amount of 20%, which was a nice little additional bonus, if you will, for budgets to have additional funding. Unfortunately, that money was just for that year. And then if you didn't use it, it was going to be basically wiped out at the end of that year. So you weren't not able to carry that over. Okay. All right. So getting into the new category 2 model. So all budgets are fixed for the 5-year window. Okay. So what that means is it's basically, if it's a square footage for libraries or if it's the cost per student for the schools, it's locked at that dollar amount. Inflation does not take in consideration for this 5 years, okay? And then the next window, next second cycle will begin in funding year 2026 to goes through 2030 and so on and so forth. So going forward, as of it is written today, it'll be for 5-year chunks. So every 5 years, those dollar amounts will probably adjust based upon inflation, but it'll be locked for that 5 years. Okay. So the big changes here, and I want to make sure we get some clarity on this. So the big changes are the minimum building amount increased to $25,000. So as I mentioned earlier, the minimum was $9,600. Now it's $25,000. So a nice little boost there for the super small schools, the super small libraries, etc. So that will help, because $9,600 does not go a long way in buying equipment internally. So they recognize that, so they increase that ceiling for us. The Category 2 budget is first determined when you spend on that 471 in that cycle, okay? So kind of like the first year, the first pilot term, your budget is not affected until you actually spend some money in that period of time, in that 5-year window. Okay, so that same cycle of same rule kind of applies in here, but it gets even more detail. So your student population is, once you lock that in, you can use that student population for the remainder of that 5-year. It does not have to change, which is an interesting tidbit of the rule. So unless you request a calculation adjustment, but you have to manually request that calculation adjustment to have that change submitted into your profile. Okay, which is interesting. But so what that means is you're not able to it's taking one piece of the micromanagement facet out of the equation, if you will. And again, like I said, if you don't request a recalculation, that C2 budget will not change at any time during that 5-year cycle. Okay. The new Category 2 budget will apply for the first year as requested, as I said, and then going forward. So if you don't do anything in funding year 2021, let's say you do it in funding year 2022, whatever budget that is established during that year is going to be that budget for the remainder of that cycle. Okay. Budgets will be administered and managed by applicants as a district-wide or library system-wide level. So this is a nice new change and shift. So now you're not micromanaging from a school district perspective or a library system perspective, individual sites, individual locations, and individual budgets, okay? It's one aggregated amount. So if you are in a school district, you can choose to put in one student population. And we're going to get into some details of depending on the size of the school district and some benefits and different functions and processes with that. So this is a nice thing. So you're not having to manage that, and you're actually, and then carrying along with that, you're no longer needing to determine where that equipment goes. So that budget, again, is it across all buildings, you can move and share and adjust that equipment anywhere within, let's say, the school district, just using that as an example in this process. So you can move that anywhere within that. And then each building has an increased budget floor. Like I said, it's $25,000. In schools with 149 or less, that's kind of the cutoff point. Again, we'll get into more detail on that. And on the library side, since you're basing your budget on a square footage, 5,555 square feet is the kind of the magic threshold number there. And again, I have some examples to show that in more detail too. So, so this helps the overall process, makes it a little bit more simplified, which I think will help with saving some time along the way. Okay. So this also improves the predictability and management of your budget. Again, taking some micromanagement pieces out of that. You're also not having to match equipment in a certain building within a certain window of time. So that's nice. You're no longer having to file a Form 500 to make sure if those equipment is transferred different places. And then your records and everything makes it easier to do and to manage that as well. The 10-year asset registration is still in effect. You still need to have documentation of those assets for a minimum of 10 years of what you did with it. That is still a requirement in case of an audit were to come up. Okay, so let's get into some nitty-gritty regarding the budgets and how they're broken up. So in this example, I have a school district that has 11 or more buildings. Okay, you basically have two options. You calculate the total number of enrolled students and you multiply that number by $167 to get your budget. Or you can calculate the number of schools by 25,000. So now you're choosing to take the $25,000 amount and multiplying it by the number of schools you use. And whichever is greater, you want to use that budget. So pretty straightforward. You have that choice of doing. In most cases, if you're going to have students, if you have most of your schools have more than 149 students, the best option for school districts with 11 or more buildings is to calculate the number of enrolled students by 167. You're going to get a higher budget amount on that. Okay. Library systems, basically the same thing. You calculate just total square footage by $4.50, or calculate the number of library buildings by $25,000. Again, if you have buildings less than 5,555 square feet, you want to use that $25,000 option. So that is for schools with 11 or more buildings, or library systems with 11 or more buildings as well. Okay. So for schools with 10 or less, you have an additional option. Okay, it's called the hybrid option. So same two current options that the 11 or more had. Calculate the total number of students by 167, or school building number by 25,000. You do one of those two, or a third approach is you can do a hybrid. And in a lot of cases, this could be the most beneficial. Again, you just have to do some quick math of which way is the best way to go. But let's say if you have 8 schools and all 8 of those schools have more than 149 students and 2 schools do have less than, you can take the 8 schools and the population for those 8 schools, multiply that population by 167, take those other two schools and just say $25,000 for this one, $25,000 for this one, total that up, and that becomes your category 2 budget. So you have that third option if you're in a 10 or less school buildings. Okay. And again, library system is structured the very same way. If you have 10 or fewer buildings in a library system, you can calculate those individual buildings if they have square footage of smaller than 5,555 feet. You can add in that hybrid approach and just add that $25,000 to those 2 pieces, but to use the 450 for the other ones if that works. Again, it's just kind of do a quick little math, and then see what options are most beneficial for you. And I can help you through this if you need to. Epic will have these numbers in the system as well. All right, questions, because a lot of this is new with the category 2. I just want to make sure that information was clear, or any questions or confusion, because it is new. So I'll pause for a moment.
Don't have any questions.
No questions, huh? Okay. I must have explained it really well. So again, so we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago when we were diving into the Epic portal. On the category 2, you will have the ability to put in one, for school districts, put in one student population, or choose to do it by location. I don't think that it really matters, because you can do it one of the two ways. If you are a school building with 10 or 11 or more, then you can just put in the aggregate numbers. Most likely going to be beneficial to have the whole aggregate number multiplied by 167. But if you're a 10 or fewer, you can choose to enter in student population by location. That doesn't mean you have to keep a budget separate like before. It's still one budget for the entire school system or school district, but you're trying to use that hybrid approach in there. And Epic will help you do that automatically. But again, anything that we come across automatically, you want to kind of double check to make sure there's some sanity pieces in there to make sure that what the system is saying is accurate. We don't want to totally believe that the system is always correct. In most cases, it probably is, but just so you know, it will make an effort to give you the best option available in that pre-calculation. So be aware of that. Okay. All right. So I've given the standard classroom pause here, and we can move on. All right. Again, competitive bidding, and I won't belabor some of this because we talked about this yesterday, but just some quick highlights to make sure that I'm pointing those out. Again, the competitive bidding process must be open and fair, as we talked about. You must wait the 128 days, the 28 days after the 470 is certified, before making any movement on the bids and or signing contracts, etc., or then filing a 471 as well. Be specific in your requests. Don't be vague. Be as specific as possible. I can help you. Kind of some best practices there of what to ask for in detail. And then you must select the most cost-effective solution in your scoring rubric, and the cost has to be the highest weighted factor, as mentioned before. Okay, so just the quick highlights in the competitive bidding process there. And again, same rules apply here on no bids or one bid on category 2 pieces. You are likely to have this be an issue because category 2 can be purchased from, and equipment can be purchased from, CDWG that's on the East Coast or wherever. I mean, a lot of things, you have a lot of more options available if you're buying equipment, parts and pieces, than having a managed solution where that provider is nice to have a local presence. But again, you are able to solicit bids, try to generate attention to your 470, and make sure that you're making an effort to try to get the most competitive option available to you. And again, if you have only the one bid and it is cost effective, you are allowed to accept that bid and move on. Okay. Again, same rules apply here. I'm I kind of went through another presentation that I'm creating for another entity that I'm building some specific bid evaluation matrices. And you just want to make sure that the cost, your overall cost or total cost is that factor, right? And all those costs are rolled into to one number, so you can actually compare and contrast the differences between the providers and the bids that were received. Again, the bid matrix is kind of the same, just it's of different value. It might have a different term in terms of years, et cetera, depending on what you're buying. So just want to make sure you're trying to compare apples to apples as much as you possibly can to make sure that you can actually compare pricing effectively. Okay. And I shared this with you yesterday, again, on the matrix, just as an example. Same process applies to the category 2 side as it did with the category 1. Again, gift rules. This may be more relevant. You may see some potential gifting violations, quote unquote, loosely termed, in the category 2 side, because there may be additional equipment that could be shared or additional equipment that would be given or gifted. So just we want to make sure that we're following those rules, because there were some allowances for this funding year. We don't know what that's going to mean come January 1st and through June 30th. So that still is an unknown of how that is going to be carried forward. But just wanted you to make sure we're paying attention to these facets as well when going through the bidding process. Again, same slide here as before. Just here's your resources. Use me as whenever possible. I'm happy to help you along the process. Again, like I said, I have my blog that I posted. I will also be posting here very shortly. If I can do it today, I will. If not, I'll do it tomorrow. But I did finalize the registration links for the future presentations for this E-rate training series. So in January, I have the dates I had listed before, but now I have the registration link live, and then the one in March, and then the one in April as well. So if you want to go in there and do that, you certainly can. That's on my blog. I have that posted, but I will send out a reminder saying that this has been updated and those links are live for registration. So I will point that out as well. All right. Well, today was a shorter one, just because we talked a lot about the same kind of things yesterday, but I wanted to kind of highlight those category 2 changes for this next upcoming year and cycle period. So any questions that you guys have on the category 2 side? Is anybody planning on any category 2 expenditures and capital expenditures in your buildings?
Not the library.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Well, you're more than welcome. Okay. Well, I will give you back some time in your life for the day. Again, my door is always open if anything comes up. If you need help planning or thinking about anything internally in terms of wireless or anything, I'm happy to help brainstorm and kind of help you along the way in that process as well. So again, I'm going to try to get these things posted as soon as possible for your reference and have this information readily available for everybody. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome. You guys have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.